morning, we've had several workshops and panel discussions on a whole host of topics. What seems to emerge is that those companies that are leaders on the LGBT inclusion front have a number of similarities that they share. They have strong networks of ally executives. They have visible senior LGBT role models. They actively ask LGBT employees to self-identify. And they have a track record of making public statements in support of LGBT rights. So we're looking forward to delving into some of these aspects with you. But let's start with your view on diversity and inclusion as a whole. What would you say are the benefits of a diverse and inclusive environment that you've witnessed at JP Morgan over the years?
Right, so welcome everybody, happy to be here. So the benefits, first of all, just so you know, I've always think it's the right thing to do anyway, period. I don't spend a lot of time sitting there like what's the net present value of it or things like that. I do think it's important to look at the other things, by the way. I've always thought the benefit was really twofold. In addition to the morality, which is treating everyone fairly, you're going to get better people. But if I pick the best people for my team, I will have the best people. If you're only picking for middle-aged, straight white men, you're not going to have the best team. And the second is cultural, which is, if you travel around the world, or hell, you even travel around parts of cities in the United States, there are different cultures. And if you don't have some people from those cultures, you're not going to relate to them very well in terms of how your business supports them. And that could be a consumer branch that's got Chinese clients, Brazilian clients, or gay clients. So to me, you get a little bit of everything if you do it right.
Okay. While many global corporations have been very focused on diversity and inclusion, local companies in Latin America, broadly speaking, still seem shy about it. Do you have any advice for companies here today that are maybe just at the start of their D&I journey?
Listen, I was in New York when that journey started back in the 80s, and went pretty quick through parts of the United States, but it did take a long time. There are a lot of lessons to be learned. There are right ways to do it. There are wrong ways to do it. There are a lot of people who do it, and they just they say it, but they don't do anything that actually does it. They may say the right words, but they don't have the right treatment of people. So if I was going to start it for a company, I would simply go look at what the best companies do. I'd have a group. I'd form an internal group that that's given the right authority. I'd make sure the internal group isn't just a bunch of self-selecting people who care about themselves, but they actually want to help the company. Because I've been to a lot of companies where those internal networking groups are very self-serving for the people who run them. Then I just have a systemic review. Like you do anything else in business, you review it, you think about it. It's like exercise, and you always try to get better at it. And of course, when you promote a few people who are openly LGBT, that does make a huge difference inside a company. And you got to be promoting them because they deserve it, not because they are LGBT. But if you seek out talent and you promote them, they tend to take a lot of it from there.
Although many multinational firms have made great strides in advancing LGBT inclusion over the last 20 years, there are still often not that many LGBT role models at a senior level, and you just touched on it. How do you feel JP Morgan is doing in this regard?
I think we're doing great. So we obviously have an extensive diversity effort. I was reviewing it about a year and a half ago, and you got to divide into its pieces. If you lump it all together, LGBT in America, Black, women, well, we're unbelievable. And if you look at it, so half of my direct reports are women. And I don't care, no matter what I do, I can't get the press to write that. Half of my direct reports are women, okay? And 20% are LGBT, which I still think is unbelievable, and it's known to people. We don't make a big deal out of it. I know, Ken, you know who they are, but it's our general counsel, head of public relations. And anyway, I was going through the numbers and the women, and then we looked at the African American, and we just haven't made enormous progress, and I think that's true in this country and a lot of other countries. That is a bigger problem. And so we set up a devoted effort to deal just with, we call it advancing black leaders, just to deal with advancing black leaders. But I did go to the people running Pride and the people who did the LGBT diversity. I said, hey, I just want to know, would you be interested in having a special effort? And they said to me, absolutely not, we're doing great by ourselves. So I said, okay. And that was Joe, yeah.
Yes. So some companies may struggle with the balance between pleasing and retaining clients versus being visible in their support for LGBT employees. How does JP Morgan strike that balance?
I don't think it's a balance at all. You know, I was just mentioning a story to you that I put in medical benefits for gay partners at Bank One in the year 2000, and Bank One wasn't, you know, Wall Street had already done most of this. Bank One was in the Midwest. It was like the Bible Belt. And I was getting like death threats from people. I'm being quite serious. And you know, some of our employees and clients, let them leave. There's no balance whatsoever. They don't like it, tough shit. And so I've never, you know, when they say the client is always right, I always say, no, the client's not always right. We don't allow clients to treat our people rudely. We don't allow clients to tell us who we can hire. You know, the clients aren't in that kind of driver's seat. Yeah, we probably lost clients from it. And every now and then I get, I mean, whatever we do, someone sends me a nasty letter about, you know, how dare you do this, how dare you do that. But once we figure out the right thing to do is we do it, and you know, maybe we get some clients for it too. I think we're very well known in the LGBT community. My guess is we probably get good employees and good clients from that too.
So you might lose some, but you may actually gain because you have LGBT customers.
I think net it's a gain, but I wouldn't do it for that reason.
Okay.
But think how you feel inside. Well, think how people feel inside the company when they see the company do something like that. That's a whole different level of what you mean.
So you know, being able to say it externally, not just internally.
Right.
Yeah. Some argue that diversity and inclusion programs are a U.S. European construct. What would you say to them?
Look, I haven't studied diversity programs around the world. I would say they're not a U.S. construct because I think the point of diversity is treating people properly. Everyone gets treated fairly. That fair concept, treating people properly concept, you know, comes out of philosophers 1,000 years ago. You know, and you know, if you go back to old communities, it was well known that there were gay people in those communities. They didn't, you know, they were mad at them. You know, it was almost the Victorian age. It became a slightly different thing. So if you study it, I don't really know where it came from, but I do think the principle that everyone should feel treated fairly, that everyone should feel like they're okay, that everyone should feel like they can contribute to a company or a business or a team or whatever it is, that principle should be kind of universal. And maybe American companies were the first to have formal, and maybe European too, formal diversity efforts. You know, but I think the principle would, you know, transcended that. I'm always upset when I see, this is unrelated, kind of related. You know, I know a lot of senators and congressmen and the vice president who found out that one of their kids was gay. And after they found out, they went public and said, my God, now I understand. Now I understand, I love my child. And all I could think to myself is, you mean they couldn't understand before? They couldn't have even the slightest bit of empathy for the position that someone else is in, you know, by just that empathy, you know. It's kind of either that or they're just taking political positions, but it's kind of shocking to me. And you have that in other things, not just LGBT, but you have it in, you know, certain types of disability and you know, you name it. And we got to get better at that.
So at least those senators got it eventually.
Yes.
Yeah. So quite a few multinational firms have publicly come out in support for LGBT rights over the years. What role do you see companies play in this arena?
Well, I think companies have played a very important role. In fact, you look at these big companies who get shellacked by the press all the time, they're usually at the forefront of some of these issues. They weren't at the back of the bus. You know, they came out, like, I think JP Morgan, 1998 or something like that. So Wall Street firms are actually ahead of most other American corporations. So I think it should play an active role. But I think the other role is it's really a political issue too. And you know, so that people can do that as an individual, companies can do that as a company, and companies can do that by participating in things like this. And that, as you know, and you may know better than me, the politics is very different around the world. So I think you got to think there's a steady, consistent effort that's got to be made.
Yeah, in some countries it may be better to do it behind closed doors, in others it's public.
Yeah.
Different countries. Yeah.
And explain it to people.
Yeah. What if governments don't change laws and introduce after you've tried to? What can companies do?
Well, you got to give me a specific example. I mean, a company should stand up for what it believes in. So like at JP Morgan Chase, we are very forthright and about all the things we do. We have to operate under the laws of the land.
Yeah.
We have to operate in the laws of that land. Otherwise, you're not welcome that land. So, making yourself known, speaking up is one thing. Violating the law would be another. So it depends what it is. I think you should be forceful. It's shocking to me. It's never really been. I travel around the whole world where people have ever said, "You guys are doing the wrong thing on LGBT," and most countries know it, and they haven't. A lot of these other countries haven't done it yet, not remotely. I mean, I remember going to Ghana. Anyone here been to Ghana? When you get to the airport, there's a sign. It says, pedophiles and homosexual will be prosecuted by death. Literally at the airport. I mean, the world has a ways to go on some of these things. And of course, Ghana has a lot of gay people too. I mean, it's absurd that somehow the powers that be think that that's the way they should really treat them. Pedophiles, I kind of agree with.
So a slight update to the sign.
Yeah.
In 2015, you were ranked number 5 in the Outstanding Financial Times top 30 LGBT allies. As an LGBT ally, what do you feel allies can do to be as effective as possible?
Well, I think our effort is broad and extensive, okay, and you know about it. Jose's been championing it here, like we haven't probably done it before, being part of this group. But we also, I mean, if you are in the United States, we write, every time something comes up, we write, they call them Friends of the Court. The Friends of the Court brief. We support, I don't even know how many pride groups we have around the world, but it's 100. And then there's obviously the big national pride. So it's illegal inside the company, outside the company, letting people participate in other events. We do it pretty much everywhere.
JP Morgan has been asking employees around the globe to self-identify as LGBT for more than 10 years through its biannual employee opinion survey. Why?
Yeah, we can't make you do it. If people want to do it, we want to support them. And I'll tell you a quick little story about Joe Evangelista, who reports to me, who runs PR, who I'd heard, who reputationally had a great reputation. So Bank One, JP Morgan merged. I'm going to become the CEO of JP Morgan. He's running PR. I take him out for a drink, and we hit it off right off the bat. And so we went out a second time, and he leaned forward to me and said, Jim, I got to tell you something I've not told anyone in the company all these years. He said, I'm gay. To which I said, yes, I know. I said, he didn't hide from me. And I said, but I want you to know that I'll support whatever you want to do. You want to come out of the closet? Come out of the closet. You have a partner, you want to bring them to a business dinner? Bring them to a business dinner. You want to do this? You could do that. I'll support any which one. So I think asking to self-identify is really just giving people a chance to do what they might want to do and help them do it, and obviously making it clear to the company it's okay. And so I always say, Joe, he didn't come out of the closet, folks. He burst out of that closet. and he did bring his partner to a lot of events after that. And I think it kind of changed it just made, he'd been covering up for all those years to a lot of, these macho men or something at JP Morgan. And several probably were gay too, by the way. But so anyway, so I think that's what it is, just making it okay to be yourself, And
what would you say is next for LGBT inclusion for JP Morgan when you look around the world?
I would say the biggest problem is black. Look around this room, folks. Okay, and you have a similar issue. I'm going past LGBT, and part of the reason is a lot of them didn't grow up in the same homes, they didn't grow up in the same communities, they didn't go to the same schools, they don't have the same culture, they join companies, they get disconnected. It is a far bigger effort that needs to be made. And we used to talk about doing African Americans, and when I was in London, and I sat down with the black community there, and they said, please don't say African American. We have the same problem here, and obviously Brazil. So I think there are issues, and I think doing stuff like this actually will help that too over time. So I think this one is just doing more. This one, the train left the station a long time ago, and in my view, it's kind of over. Doesn't mean don't keep fighting, but the next generation, You know, and I'm not quite sure it's true in Brazil, but in the United States, you go to any college campus, it's over. You know, other than, you know, a handful selective, you know, radical right, this is not an issue whatsoever. Huge support for it, and so we've got to keep fighting for it, make sure it doesn't go backwards. But
yeah, so hopefully in 20 years we don't need conferences like this anymore.
Yeah, hopefully you might, but hopefully.
Yeah.
I think people like to get together and talk about common issues and problems. And,
Yeah.
we have 100 working, you know, various groups that get together, and people, you know, they learn from each other and they enjoy it, and so.
Yeah. You're also the chairman of the Business Roundtable,
Yeah.
Which is an association of 192 CEOs from America's leading companies.
Yeah.
Does the business case for D&I get discussed at this forum?
You know, the honest truth is not substantially. Most of those big companies already do all this. And I have not surveyed them, and I could find out. It's not a bad question. It has come up at our own ranks. You know, like how many women are in that room and how many blacks are in that room, and I've not asked how many, you know, gay CEOs there are in the room, but it could be something that if that group did, it would probably be sharing best practices. How do you share best practices? I am very conscious of our own membership, you know, because I think that should be diverse.
Yeah. Well, you're trying to push for tax reform as well, so there are some big issues out there. You've just come from Mexico. You'll be in Brazil today, and then Argentina tomorrow. And I know everyone's always very interested in your view on the economy. Could you share your outlook on the economy across the region and the rest of the world at the moment?
Well, I'll give you. I just want to tell you one of the things I said to the Mexicans. I met with the president. A bunch of us met with the president and a bunch of CEOs in our own town hall. And I always start by kind of giving a toast to them about how much I respect Mexico. We're lucky to have Mexico as a neighbor, and no one in America should treat anyone Mexican in bad in any way, shape, or form. Which is why, and I'd say most of the business community agrees with me. You know, that we don't like some of the words that have been used in our elections and around immigration and, you know, trade and Mexico being a bad neighbor. We're lucky to have Mexico and Canada as neighbors. And if you don't believe me, make believe you were China. Your neighbors are Russia, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, North Korea, South Korea, Philippines, and Japan. And it's a pretty tough part of the world. And so the global economy is actually doing quite well. Matter of fact, it's doing, people, they almost can't say it because they're so used to it not doing well. It's doing well. Okay, Brazil's gone from 0 to something a little bit north. You think it's be 3% now? Oh, that's very good. But it was the worst economy for the last 2 years, down 7 or 8%. You know, the emerging markets are doing better. China's going to 6%. Japan, if you said a year ago, is going north of 1.5. Europe is going north of 2, and I think the United States is strengthening. You're talking about every major economy on the planet is strong and maybe getting stronger. So it's the first. You know, it's the first kind of synchronized global expansion we've had in a long time. And you see it in a lot of other anecdotes and stories and indicators and stuff like that. And so, you know, Mexico itself has done quite well. So, you know, in Mexico, not only has it been a good neighbor, but they've done a great, it's been a real democracy for, what, 25 years? And they've grown, I think, most of that 25 years at 2.6% or something like that on average. And they've had their ups and downs. The oil prices affects them a lot and stuff like that. But they've been doing nothing to get stronger. And reform, you know, and I think that this president, Peña Nieto, who put in these 11 reforms, I think they're unbelievable. I think they've been talking about some of that reform for years, about some of their unions and electrical and transmission and most importantly, the energy sector. And so I always look at a country, what makes a country good is that it reforms, that it gets better. It's not that it was perfect. No one was perfect. So you can look at the history of any country, and as it developed, they all had problems. You know, America had a civil war, and that's a hell of a way to settle a dispute. 1 in 30 people in your country gets killed. But that was how it got settled. And so, so America, you go way, way back, had forms of corruption and judicial system that didn't work. So you look at Brazil, Brazil's got a lot of things going for it, but it's got this one other thing which, you know, I know it feels really terrible right now, but the judiciary is in charge. Okay, you've had all this corruption, and the Supreme Court is in charge. And so it's not, it didn't get so far that it's going to disrupt the whole, it's not like that cronyism and stuff like that, where if you go to other countries today, it's quite clear that that's not true. And so, one's a whole different level of corruption than others. So, Brazil, if it keeps reforming, it's got institutions, natural resources, education, global companies, it's got all these unbelievable things, and a judicial system that works for the people, you're going to be in very good shape over the next 100 years.
All right, we know you have a very busy schedule. We're really thankful that you spent some time with us, and have a great rest of your trip for the region.
Folks, thank you very much for having me here. Enjoy the rest of your event.
Obrigada mais uma vez, Jamie Dimon e Ken Jensen, por essa discussão muito interessante.